So welcome to our laundry room, you guys. This is the space. It is very small. When we moved into the house, we redid the floor, which was just like this laminate floor because the laminate in here was pulling up and all this stuff. So we just kind of put something down really quick, got the washer dryers in, and forgot about this space. We didn't do anything to this room. So it has turned into a disaster. There's no storage. Everything's on the ground. Everything's on top of the washer and dryer. So I think it's time to add some storage in here and make it a little bit more functional. Like, I want it to look good.
Yeah.
I think
both functional
Yeah.
and maybe a little cuter. That would be great.
Yeah, maybe the function is the part we're looking forward to the most because this door is usually closed. But it would be nice if it was open, that it didn't look like it does right now, which is probably just because there's no storage.
Yeah, because it's right off our kitchen. So it's like a great little nook to kind of store some different things. But like right now it's just the floor. So
yeah, everything's on the floor.
Which is fine. Well, it's not fine, but it's been fine. But
it's been okay.
It's not great.
No, we need to fix this. So here we go, you guys. We're gonna see what we can do.
So the first thing we had to do was get everything out of the room. Of course, it was so messy and just so cluttered that it looked like 10 times better just by getting everything out of there. The next thing we did was remove this old shelf. There was just loose boards and it wasn't what we were looking for. And by doing that, we kind of ripped some of the wall back off. The way they were attached, it was just so attached to the wall behind it. So it pulled off some of the pieces. So we decided to skim coat some of those areas just to kind of get everything back to that level position. We love our joint compound, and so we did some of that. Next thing we did was to measure everything out. The way the vent had to connect to this dryer was a little bit weird compared to normal, so we just had to measure everything out to determine how everything was going to connect together and how to build our platform for our washer and dryer. So I'm just measuring the clearances here on these certain pieces that couldn't be moved in our laundry room. So now I'm just cutting the pieces for the platform. This is something we came up with a plan for right after we did all those measurements. So I kind of already had all the measurements already planned out. So just making sure that these pieces fit into the room. After that, I grabbed all the other pieces and then was able to kind of cut everything to the same size. We decided to make a platform because it was going to save us some space, but also make getting into the washer and dryer a little easier because it'll raise it up off the ground. So there's not as much bending down when you're getting into the washer and dryer, which is super nice. Here I'm just kind of putting together these basic kind of frames, nothing too crazy here, just a very simple kind of frame I built out. I made 3 of these kind of sections to kind of act as the underlying frame. This might have been a little bit overkill for the amount of room I was trying to cover, but I definitely wanted this to be solid as washer and dryer units kind of like move around a lot, and I didn't want this thing to be wiggling around and making noise. So this, again, might have been overkill, but it worked out and definitely made a nice solid base for our washer and dryer. So we also had to make sure that the spacing from the back wall was where we wanted it compared to the size of the washer and dryer. So that's kind of what we're doing here. The next thing we decided to work on was adding the shiplap to the back wall. We were planning to do these floor to ceiling shiplap pieces on the back wall because our washer and dryer kind of covered half of the back wall anyways. And that would also give a kind of contrast from the other walls that weren't going to be floor to ceiling shiplap. So we're just cutting some very long pieces here, and so we can attach them to the back wall. We initially started applying liquid nails to attach these pieces, but that didn't really work that well because you had to hold it in place and it took too long to adhere. So we borrowed my dad's nail gun and that went obviously a lot quicker. So I'm super happy we did that. The only downside of that is that you end up leaving little holes in the wood pieces that you're gonna have to go back and fill if you don't want to see that. So this is our hose situation, our vent from the dryer. Not ideal, definitely not recommend kind of this kind of curved situation, but this is all we could really do in this space. So that is what we came up with. And here I'm cutting our space saver vent piece that'll connect to the dryer. So as you can see here, it kind of pops up, and that's how it'll kind of connect down to that dryer vent that you saw earlier. And now I'm just kind of attaching this top piece of wood to the frame below. I just kind of wanted this again to be solid, so just making sure everything's secure before we put the washer and dryer back on. So now we're just cutting more shiplap pieces just to kind of continue around the room. We obviously had to get a certain amount of shiplap installed before we put the washer and dryer back, so that we could actually get them back into the location. But here's what that kind of looked like at this point. Definitely looked really nice. It helped kind of tie the room a little bit more together, and definitely makes it look a little bit cleaner in there. So we just continued kind of cut and trim and shiplap pieces just around the room. Again, just to kind of get as much done before we put the wash and dryer back in.
So I'm really excited about this part. We're putting this trim on top like this. Is it?
Might have to cut this a little bit more.
But then we're also gonna put this right on top, which I think looks really good.
Yeah, I'll have to shave off a little bit here.
But yeah, perfect.
So yeah, we just installed that trim and it did look really nice. It definitely made it look more finished than it was before. That little ledge just kind of adds that nice little detail to the walls. We also added trim to this box down here just to kind of make it look a little bit more built in and not so kind of flat and plain. Now we just went around and caulked everything. This process took a long time, but definitely was super worth it. It made everything just look very built in and made the tolerances, our cutting tolerances a little bit better because everything looked very seamless and smooth. It didn't look like there was any gaps. So definitely recommend caulking everything in before you paint. So we're just continuing the shiplap around the room. And our house is kind of old, so we had to kind of keep making sure everything was level as we continued around the room, just to make sure everything was kind of going in the right direction. But here's kind of where we ended at. So this is before it painted, and I think we still needed to caulk some of this section over here, but everything looked really nice and just kind of really made the laundry room look more like a laundry room. And I think this was just like our first look at it kind of actually coming together and kind of our vision kind of coming to life here. So the next step was to prep the area for painting. So we just taped off a bunch of stuff and covered our washer. I primed the electrical panel first with some spray paint primer, and then we used my dad's spray gun to kind of paint the rest of the room white. Then we decided to cut our butcher block pieces for our floating countertops, so we could kind of get those nice and installed. These were just from Home Depot, kind of solid, unfinished wood pieces so we could stain it. We did end up having to cut quite a bit off, but it ended up being kind of a better solution than getting a different type of material, as these kind of come in preset countertop sizing. I then, used some pre-stain to kind of prep the wood before staining. That's always a good idea just to make sure it's not very blotchy. We also installed our railing for our floating countertop here that is going to go above the washer and dryer. And we also installed this IKEA built-in cabinet area. So then I started to stain the countertop pieces. This kind of took us a few tries to kind of figure out something we were happy with. Stains are always very hard for us to pick out. So I don't know, maybe that's just I don't know if that's just an us problem or if that's something that everyone else has issues with too, but stain is, I don't know, it's very difficult to find a good stain, or it's hard to find the right thing for the right type of wood. So it took us a few tries, but we ended up with something we were pretty happy with, and it's kind of more of a gray wash look. So it kind of knocked down the color on the wood a little bit and made it a little bit more worn in kind of gives it that worn in look. We finished it with a matte varathane, which is our preferred sheen. Then I sanded down these floating shelves that we were going to install. The wood we got was kind of not the best wood, but it was definitely a better price than some of the other stuff. So I just sanded it down a lot, filled in a lot of the holes with wood putty, and we were painting these white anyways, so it wasn't a big deal if there was kind of some weird stuff to the pieces, but they ended up looking and working okay. So now we are installing our pegs into the trim. We wanted these pegs to kind of go around just kind of half the room so we could hang stuff, dry clothes and anything like that that needed to be hung. But those went in pretty simple. We just used a little bit of wood glue to kind of hold all the pegs in. And but yeah, that process was pretty simple and smooth.